it to. Ah, okay, perfect.
Okay. I try to share just my. Doesn't show up.
Hi, Felix.
Okay.
Hello, Vincenzo. Is this is started?
Zoom.
In a minute or so.
Okay, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks.
Yes, I'm just
And you?
preparing my screen.
Fine.
Oh, okay.
With a lot of work, but fine.
Okay.
I'm gonna sign this way.
I guess so. Okay, hi everybody. It took a while before I got to my own seminar in these seminars for around complex or chemical organization theory, because I had a real busy time finishing some courses which I give as a music whisper. But the thing is, I think I announced this already before. Is that something that interests me as a musician, but also as a researcher when I was involved in this, is to keep an eye on the microscopic music. I think I will explain what this means to me. It has a few different levels, even if so. But maybe just to explain a little bit those ideas I will present in part here. It says I guess it's still working. I started these sessions that I had with at the time man who is the director of IPM in Ghent as a researcher studying physiological reactions on music, doing research around that. Also, we tackle the problem of emotions, but also the problem we try to relate to digital signal analysis of music. And we had a lot of discussions at the time. It was rather new, a rather quite new field to study in this sense. And while at IPM, they have evolved quite a lot. They have, I guess, they have a complete research center around physiological measurement and gestural. But anyways, just straight where I did with the topic which I'd like to discuss today. Maybe just a small side note is that IPM was the Belgium, the IRCAM center in Paris. In fact, the recording studio for composers. Kyle Gooivaert, because I saw Christian refer to him in one of the Kyle Gooivaert involved a long time at IPM, but also Stockhausen, and it's an interesting environment, and it still bears it still inherited some of that creativity vibe when I was there in IPM. Just a small side note. What I would like to talk about, in fact, is about some aspects, maybe an introduction about some aspects that motivate as a composer and as a student of music, is that there is ubiquity of music. I mean, you can find in every field that was studied, ethnomusicology, the scientific discipline, some kind of. However, this evident, we could state like that be rather making such statements. But somehow I always kept the idea that we should keep an eye open for some, to look for universals when regarding perception. I'll go into that later. And it could be said that cultural relativism has perhaps been overstated at certain points in musicological history as well. At some points, it was all down to the, I would say, the eye of the beholder music. With the measurement apparatus we have today, I mean, from brain scanning to physical research apparatuses, and the way we can study the musical signal itself, we managed somehow to find certain underpinnings of music that I was, that some aspect of universals, musical universals. But I'll get to this later on. Just to say, so to me, if you watch a phenomenon, essentially unbroken stream of or if you're, it's important to sexual in this kind of
Stan,
yeah.
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be a problem with the sound.
Okay.
Are you sure you got the best possible connection where you are?
I can one change. I have to disconnect 1 second.
Yeah.
Just try with a different. Yes. Is it any better?
Let's see. Let's make a little test.
Yeah. Is it still doing something?
I think it's better now.
Okay. Okay. So there's a problem. I can put a Wi-Fi extender if it's in the room itself here, if it continues this problem. Okay, I'll just continue.
Yeah, please.
I was just stating that, yes, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That we need a kind of sexual ontology, or I would say a relationist kind of ontology, just to be able to tackle a problem as music perception or music or sound, as I will go into later. I'll present later on some things about which is specific to music, some things about the problem of continuity is related to the same kind of remarks which I just made, and I'll try to go into, that was my promise, to try to find a relation with complex dynamics and chemical organization theory, as I heard about by these sessions. There's two questions which I will pose at the end. Is what can music and music auditory perception bring to COT and vice versa? So just to give you a short overview. Let me start by a small, just it is a little small, just a first, as a first acquaintance with sound. Maybe some of you are probably aware of the way sound works, but I'll bring it anyhow here. What's happening when you watch the acoustics of sound? What's happening in the air when a sound wave propagates? The sound wave is kind of energy, which because of its disturbance, because of a disturbance of vibration, mostly when you're seeing music or sound waves in general, when a disturbance in a form of energy propagates through the air, you will see a kind of behavior like you see the slinky here underneath. And the idea is that music travels through the air, moving the air molecules, in a way that the air molecules are not moved themselves, are not propagated themselves, but they move according to the energy by compressing themselves and decompressing themselves. So it's the form of a longitudinal wave, if I'm making myself clear. Okay, just to have just that idea of a slinky moving through the air, that's quite a good approximation of what happens physically when a sound wave is propagating. Then there is the second dimension to those waves, which I would bring immediately, is that there's a, when you watch a musical signal or a sound signal, you watch a wave which is just a position of energy, of amplitude through time. You see this in, I don't know if you see my mouse cursors. You see this in the left. This is the time representation of the wave signal, the wave function. But there's a second aspect to this, and that's the frequency aspect. The frequency aspect is nothing less than a Fourier transform of the time domain, and I mean every wave signal that passes through time can be represented by a sum of a number of simple sinusoid waves, and this sum provides you the spectrum in frequency language. So that's, for a lot of people, this will be standard knowledge. But this will be important in trying to understand what happens when we jump to the domain of perception. Okay, then there's Then there's the first part, which I would like to talk about when we see auditory perception. It's interesting to watch it from an evolutionary functionality, because in reality, the auditory system, or the ear organ, the anatomy of the ear, is a real complex thing with lots of parallel processes happening in different forms, and it's not all clear yet what is happening there. If you look from the function which it has in an evolution sense, it makes sense to it's a good frame to try to understand certain aspects of this. The first aspect is that the ear is to be seen as a radar system to human beings, but also all mammals and most part of vertebrates have a sense of hearing organ that is rather more or less similar as the human one. And in fact, it's all serving the same functionality of trying to scan the environment which is surrounding us. You could say that our hearing sense is one of our most principal domain of sensing the environment. So in practice, and if you watch how the ear organ is formed, in practice this means that sound comes in through your ears in a binaural fashion, so you have left and right ears, and immediately afterwards sound is already translated, amplified, sent through a kind of Fourier transform compartments, and it reaches different parts of the ear organ, which I will not go into here. But there's a lot of processes taking place parallelly to give you an idea, finally, on the height of the auditory nerve, an idea of what's happening. But what's happening, that's a big question. I mean, what's happening when you watch sound surrounding us? It's quite a complex, dynamical world of waves passing through the airs, waves interfering with each other, waves stacked upon each other, superposed on each other, and it's all a rather complex way if you would just look at this in a graphical way when setting this out with digital signal analysis. But in fact, to our ears, this is quite clear what happens. And the primary part of our ears will always be engaged in trying to put the origin, trying to look for the origin of sounds which are surrounding us. So, I mean, that's the first part, is that we are looking for sources of sound, where they come from, but we are understanding as well how sound is moving through the air up until the acceleration of sounds. We can all have a quite clear message of this, and we can feel this in a three-dimensional way. So we have a sense of depth, height, left and right, and we also have a sense of how big objects are that make sounds. So there's quite some experiments on this. This is on the level of auditory perception, but the important aspect for us to understand is that our ear is capable to a wide degree of understanding the dynamics of motion and momentum of motion, position of motion up till acceleration, and to put this all in a quite logical way. And it does this in two domains, in the time domain and in the frequency domain. I will go into this further on. Just one example, so you could maybe have a more clear picture of this. If you would see people who are visually impaired, they have a kind of inner vision, and they are quite capable of understanding where objects are in a certain room space, and they are capable of understanding if objects are making noise themselves. But in other sense, some people are more like bats and dolphins and other kind of mammals. They also have the possibility of, through making noises, of understanding reflections, diffractions in the room, and understanding where objects are, what the size of objects is, how the surface of objects feels. I mean, they have a quite clear image of what's happening in that inner vision, just to give you as an example. Not everybody has that clear image that's clear, but we all have that sense of motion in the environment by our ears, by our hearing sense. What is important to know is that in fact, the hearing sense is something special. It shares this with the sense of smell. It shares also the fact that it's a really old and primary, it's one of the older senses we have. And you can never shut it off. I mean, it's always there when you sleep. Everywhere you are, your ears are always processing what's happening around them. There is also, and that's an important aspect of what I would like to talk about, a constant relation to states of arousal, I would say, and I'm consciously. There's quite some theory about this. There's a constant evaluation on an emotional level of the environment going on. This is quite straightforward if you think about how our ears served as protecting us from predators in a certain, and still today maybe in a certain part of our evolution. So, but the important thing is there's a constant feedback with our emotional system taking place. This is all, and this comes from brain research, this is all happening in early auditory perception. So in low-level perception, this is not passing our brain cortexes. This is really in really short and fast processing that this is taking place. Another part of this emotional processing is also the coupling with the sensory motor control system. Not only when we try to understand motion in sound when it goes through the air, but also we are kind of feeling the movements it make by activating parts of our neural system and our muscle system. Though they can measure this. I'm not explaining this very well, but there's quite some interesting research about this. For example, there's the work of Rolf Inge Godoy and multiple others. But this coupling with the sensory motor control system will also lead to, and still today, to research in musicology being done between gestures and what's happening in the musical signal. And there's quite some promising results there as well. But I would like to stay more on this level of the ear as a radio system, because I think it provides a good background of understanding what the musical signal could be watched at, or what constraints are set on our way of percepting music. That would be a better way to state this. Yeah, I have a lot of references here. I can give you my text later on, so you can check this for yourself. Now, a second important part, but I would say it's a smaller part of the picture of evolution that we have, is that the evolution of the vocal tract of human beings went through some rather relevant changes in history. In fact, they found in fossil evidence, so paleontological evidence from Neanderthal people, they found in certain parts of evolution of the larynx is where our vocal cords are, and where we are able to manipulate pitch and amplitude of sounds, for example. We could say this is the part of our vocal tract that gives us the possibility to sing. So there's some theories about this. I won't go much into this, but there's an interesting book by Stephen Mitten on this, presenting a kind of music language hypothesis. And this goes back to the fact that there would be kind of primordial language, or a primitive form of language that was more of a kind of singing language. And he uses a lot of evidence to state this, and its most important part is that Neanderthals wouldn't have the possibility, because of the size of their brains, form of their brains, to develop language as we have, but they had the possibility to sing. Anyhow, you can check his book if this is of interest to you. But another interesting author in that sense is Ellen Dissanayake. She's I guess a cultural anthropologist. She studies mother-infant interactions, so vocal interactions, mother-infant interactions across cultures, and came to the conclusion that the way we are talking to our babies, to infants, is quite universal. So it doesn't depend so much on culture. And it's also, as you probably all know, is a kind of more iconic version of language, as music languages as well, where in fact emotions are brought over by using certain aspects that are also really common to musical form. And it belongs to the pitch kind of control over the sounds and amplitudes. But anyhow, the hypothesis I make here is that, in fact, music language, as well as mother-infant interactions, make use, by having evolved a vocal tract that is able to synthesize a lot of sounds, and this is an important thing, have been able to tap onto our evolutionary apparatus of motion perception, and in that sense also have had the possibility to control certain aspects of arousal and emotion in human beings. This kind of I would say manipulative language is still used today. I mean, people when they talk emotionally, but certainly for babies. But it's also, yeah, I know of some experiments with primates. It's also quite clear that people are able to communicate through that kind of language with other species as well. It could have well been an important aspect of our cultural evolution. It's not my intention to go deeply into this because there's a lot of research on this and a lot of interesting side aspects. For example, about evolution of language, how it could be seen not as a maybe an aspect of learning, but an aspect of manipulating, teaching other people. It's a different kind of feedback mechanism which comes into place. But anyhow, that's not the goal of this presentation. Important thing to remember is that if we watch the evolutionary picture, and this is a kind of functionalist way of watching this, but this is corroborated by a lot of research in auditory perception. If we watch that picture, there's a rather big part, and I would call this a layer, which pertains to the motion dynamics of sound through space. That's the translational level, which I call, which is of interest to us. That's a big part because of the music radar system of our evolution. And next to this, there's that emotional system, sensory motor control, which is attached to that. And I believe that music as an art is exploring exactly those motion dynamics quite a lot, and so is able to reach us emotionally, but more than emotionally, even in a kind of motion sensing way. I think it's just an hypothesis. It's not something to say that music is just only this, but I would suggest this is kind of a set of constraints which the picture of evolution provides us, and with all I call this non-linearities. A lot of non-linearities are happening when you watch the ear organ. Things are like the way neurons are fired after the ear. It's not quite linear, and it's not quite a linear Fourier transform neither. But a lot of things are aimed just at this aspect of motion detection and motion tracking, source tracking, and goal estimation of motions as well. And I think this provides a set of constraints if you want to understand what's happening when you are listening to music. And more than this, I think that music is exactly, a lot of music is just is exploring this motion dynamics in a certain way. Okay, this brings me to the next subject. I'm sorry for my bit of nervousness. I get a little bit heckling, I would say, but that's not the right word. But okay, let's go on. This is exactly another word. This is another dimension which I'm not controlling at the moment in my voice, but the problem of continuity. There's something with the musical or the signal which is presented to the ear that's completely different than what we have in other senses. I mean, I will try to explain this. I mean that when we hear a sound, we are quite, and there's a lot of experiments done in this sense, we are quite immediately aware of the frequency of a sound that is played to you. Even if you hear a short burst of sound, that short that you would say, oh, this is impossible to draw conclusions on a frequency, or to just have a Fourier transform that gives a clear single solution. I would say I read some articles that even violates the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle in this, but we are actually able to grasp in really short bursts of time, to grasp continuity of signals. And I mean, we are able to grasp the infinity of a frequency related interpretation of the signal, and we do this in early level still, in low level. This is happening at the level of the basilar membrane, among other sites. And we're in fact, all the time when we listen music, not music, when we listen to sound in our auditory system, all the time we have this information in the time domain as well as the frequency domain. So we are constantly balancing on that cleavage, because those variables, time and frequency, are conjugate variables, much like position and momentum is. So I mean, if you want to have a localized single time, then and you have a sound just localized at a single time point, then your number of frequency. Hello?
Sorry, my bad here. I was
Okay.
muting microphones. Sorry, but please keep going.
Okay. So as I was talking about the law of continuity, in fact, when we hear music, we are instantly aware of the time and frequency domain. We are, even because of the uncertainty principle, you would never be able to have time and frequency definition, I mean, a complete picture of both at the same time. We are getting there quite closely. And this is an important aspect, is that you could say that in our sound, with our hearing, our sense of hearing, we are in fact feeling that duality quite concretely and directly all the time. And we don't seem to have problems with this, while in mathematics this has always been quite a challenge. But the challenge of infinitesimals is that kind of challenge, or the Xenos Paradox, and even the reason Pythagoras was studying those proportions of strings was the same one. Is that in fact we are able to feel those when in the finite world we have a series of events, and we try to translate it to the infinite world, and to try to have a discrete and qualitative image of an infinity, like a frequency of a wave is. We are doing this all the time with our hearing, and this is happening in a biological way. So this is not something that is higher level in the brain. It's happening also in the sense that there's few different phase-locked loops which we are constructing in the auditory system, but there's even a few, it passes through liquids, through solids, and through the air before we make that image of what a sound is. So there's quite a number of parallel processes going on. I read an interesting article that we would be able to violate the principle of uncertainty of Heisenberg, but should read this yourself. But yeah, one more interesting article to mention is it was quite a seminal article from Dennis Gabor, who was a collaborator of Norbert Wiener, the famous cybernetician, and he in fact laid the foundation for wavelet analysis of music, and he based himself on quantum measurement in complex Hilbert spaces. And just to define the small window we just only need to be able to do the Fourier transform of a musical signal, just a real small window. People say that in our ear organ, because of the timing, they could test this with experiments, that we are able, just on the basis of two zero crossings of a wave signal, and we have a feel for the phase information of the waveform, we are able immediately to grasp the infinity aspects of music, or the continuity aspects of sound waves. I think it's an important element. It's one of the reasons that musicians are always turning to music, I think. Then, as I set out to do, I was trying to find a way to find relations to the chemical organization theory, as was set forward by, I think, Francis and Thomas. I read a little bit about it. I didn't have enough time to just to go really deeply into this. I must admit this. But there was a few questions, a few remarks which I had. The way I see it, chemical organization theory starts from a set of rules which we call reactions with conjunction and disjunction operators, on molecules or whatever entity we would choose. And this would lead to organizations, among other things, but self-maintaining enclosed organizations of reactions, which is like a kind of attractors, if I understand this well, where a system could then find some homeostasis or remain in. But when I was reading this, I was asking myself, okay, but what about the dynamics of those reaction speeds, the concentrations? I think that's where the dynamics come into play. If you watch, I think the level of organizations is an important one, but then the quantitative level to see those dynamics in action is, I think, would be of mostly of interest from a continuity kind of aspect. If you would try to relate musical or auditory signals with this kind of reactions, I think there's a little bit of, I'm just asking this, a qualitative bottleneck when you just look at molecules or discrete categories and their conjunctions, disjunctions, when trying to understand a relationist thing like a musical or like a sound wave or a stream of sound information is. So it's not straightforward for me to just make this comparison. I think, and that's one remark I had maybe at the micro level, because I could well understand that if you define organizations on the basis of those reactions, and that you could kind of define a kind of oscillating or disturbance like a waveform is, and that kind of disturbance could serve as a basis for dynamical analysis, but still it keeps the level of interest on the level of organizations. I read about the recent article on resilience. I think it was interesting there, but I think that the idea of using differential equations to understand those dynamics will not be sufficient. I think we should be looking at the Fourier transforms and maybe look at Hilbert spaces to try to define such dynamics. I had one remark about musical notes before I would try to look at some possibilities. The one remark on musical notes I had was that I have a little bit of difficulty with musical notes in sense as a musician myself in a practical way, but also from a mathematical point of view and from a historical point of view. Probably those remarks were made already in the sessions, but some of them maybe could be stated a little bit more clearly. I think if we would like to draw mathematically relations between intervals of notes, we should make a new interval ratio metric, which is different than the one we just have by using the idea of piano notes or by equal temperament scale. I think also it would just show a small part of what's interesting. And just, for example, yes, which I state, overtone structures of in the timbre of tones, like an instrument, the harmonic series of a piano tone, would be more interesting to include, as interesting, I would say, not more interesting, as interesting to include as harmonical relation between notes or interval relations. And this is completely excluded when we see those note relations. So from a mathematical point of view or acoustical point of view, it's not really an easy way of defining a metric. I think it should be thought out in a different way. And then, of course, next to this, there's the historical thing that, yeah, most of music, if you watch history, was not really note-based, but was made with singing or rhythmical instruments, and also the intonation changed quite a lot during our history. And also, if you watch other cultures, it's quite straightforward that Western intonation is not a universal. It is, of course, suited to orchestras and big groups of people playing music together. It provides a shared way of doing things. But also from my practical experiences, if you watch a jazz musician play, he will always bend the notes. He will always look for some kind of motion. If you have a saxophone player or a singer or a bass player, he will look for the tensions and the motion into sound in a different way. And the only one who is just restrained is the poor piano player. And he will try to play as much note as he has fingers, to try in superposition to find ways of just moving with the music, moving with the superposition of waves, which he is in fact creating. Just a side note on musical notes. As an end to my talk, I would like to talk of, or just point out a few possibilities that would be interesting to investigate. I asked myself two questions. The first one is, can the dynamics of music perception be translatable to COT, to COT? Would that be an interesting part to do? And I say, like I said already, yes, but it would need a kind of topology to do this, and temporal and or spatial, and it could even be Fourier transform based, like Hilbert spaces, taking care of the movements and also the angular momenta in waves, and it would be a rather difficult computation exercise. But still, I think it's interesting if we use the translational level of sound, which I proposed. So if we see a sound traveling to space, or if we see auditory and music perception, a sound traveling through space, we could try to find a kind of way to try to see if trajectories through that space, which are more of the kind of calculus kind of continuities, which could be studied. It's just in a Euclidean space. Could be interesting to see if certain motions in music are representable in COT. It would be interesting. There is, if we watch the question from a different angle and we ask ourselves, is chemical organization theory translatable to dynamics in music? It's a similar kind of problem. The first part is, if you want to feel dynamics like are brought forward in a chemical organization network, then in fact, you should also try, if you want to feel the dynamics, to try to map it on some kind of space which is seen as a space where music is in motion. So this is my translational level, which I try to present. And there are some ways to map. I mean, there's a lot of Dolby Surround and kind of firms which are trying to map aspects of spatiality in sound on certain parameters in the sound. So it would be straightforward to find a way to, for example, try densities molecules or concentrations of molecules, if we have a kind of spatial topology to place this and to have these densities translated to that musical translational space, that would be straightforward. In another sense, if you would go more directly and sense the continuity dynamics of a chemical organization network, then we could also just choose a simple parameters, pitch or amplitude or phase relations, and just see what it was offered, but this will not yield much musical results. Problem is that there is nothing, and it doesn't take care of the harmonics which are part of musical perception in that sense. That's something I explained already. Then there is two things left. Is that, yeah, I think it would be an interesting experiment if we could take a part of the auditory system, like for example the organ of Corti. We can choose different small aspects and try to model this in chemical organization network. I think it's quite straightforward for some aspects, as they are also just biochemical reactions. But that would be more of simply really scientific method of trying to hear what the dynamics are doing without musical interest, I think. Then there's also one other way which I think of, which would be interesting, as I see that complex, that COT is based on that set of rules of conjunctions and disjunctions. It could be in a rather straightforward manner be offered to musicians or to performers playing kind of cybernetic game. And to me, the most interesting thing would be to give players a kind of gestural patterns or gestural maps. There's a lot of work being done at EPAM still now around this kind of gestural mapping, kind of gestural forms which are taking place also in music, and to see how performance in different combinations of those mappings set out by the rules by a COT, to see how this dynamic works out. We could study the sound emissions and the various feedback loops that would exist between the performers. Would be interesting to try such an experiment. Yeah, and I think I will end my session here. I didn't have the time to really work out this a little further, like I said already, in complex organization theory. I'm not quite acquainted with the mathematics which go deeper into the dynamics of it, but I think there's an interesting point that we could make there. Okay, thank you very much. And I'm sorry for my kind of heckling presentation.
Thank you, Stan. I think it was really interesting. Nothing to be sorry about. The connection at the beginning kind of betrayed us, but then I think like most of it was pretty clear. There were some little moments where we couldn't understand what you say, but they last for like 4 seconds every 5 minutes. So it was like pretty, I think it was kind of, we will say, near optimal. So can you please stick to the slides so we can maybe motivate some questions?
Okay.
Who has questions? Are there any questions? Because so Katharina Schaffer is asking for the references, and the slides will be, if you can share the slides, of course. Yes, this will be up on our YouTube channel. Yes. So there won't be problem, but it's best to have directly the file.
And even say I would like to write this out and to have this more in a transparent way. On paper would be interesting too.
Yeah, if I would like to make a little comment before questions. If anybody has questions, maybe you can like write your name in the chat so we can organize. Hey, we are like 6 people anyways. It's not a big deal, but that's the normal way we do it online. So when you were talking about the dynamics and the states for COT, I think this is a regular kind of confusion or maybe thing to read further, which is this notion of abstraction. So if you think of something very simple, just one molecule that can be created or destroyed, nothing more. So we get this species S that can come from outside and also can decay, can disintegrate or something.
Yeah.
So we have the concentration S as a function of time, right? And this depends on like whatever parameters we set. So the state of the system is the value of S, the concentration of S, how much S there is. We can think of discrete or continuous measure, whatever we want, but there is a number that defines. If we have two molecules, maybe S and S1 and S2, then we will have some dynamics, and then the state is defined by the concentrations of S1 and S2. So in COT aims at studying very large networks. So in the beginning, we have like in principle, something as large as we want. So we got like thousands or tens of thousands of molecules. So the state is going to be something really complicated because it's going to be a very long vector. So what COT cares about is about the abstractions. So of course it can be refined further to more like dynamical aspects of it, but there is this notion of abstraction which tells you what molecules among these thousands of molecules are active, because some of them will decay due to simply to the happening of the reactions. Some of them will not be able to self-maintain in time because they are needed to create others, but those others then do not create it back. So so the network, if you look at in the long run, it will only sustain molecules that somehow globally cooperate with each other. You see?
Yeah, I understand.
And that's the point, and it allows you to skip the computational tough analysis of how the states evolve in time. So you directly have a broad picture of what are the possible end states. There are many intricacies between this idea of getting the abstractions and this idea of getting to the right states for a given concentration, for given speeds of reactions, or all that things you mentioned. So they all play a role. So the great deal about COT is that it creates these two layers, the abstract layer and the concrete layer. Like most of people in dynamical systems works at the concrete layer. So COT provides this abstract layer, which is computationally okay for even very large networks where like concrete computations cannot tell you much about. So that's the game.
Yeah, but I quite understood that this was the case. I think it's interesting, and it's a way to have a qualitative description of dynamics going on. But if you are taking this to the level of okay, you have the concentrations or the mass of molecules, okay, but if you need a kind of idea of how this works, like if you would see this as a kind of spatial phenomenon, seeing densities through space in this way, how would you apply a topology or a metric to define that? You need to go on the other level then.
You need to go to the concrete level. Yes, to the level of states. And that's what we did with Vincenzo when we showed this, these little examples. We actually implement a very simple dynamical rule, which was very similar to the most simple one, and which is the mass action kinetics, that the happening of reactions is proportional to how many of them are around. So that assumes implicitly that they are all evenly distributed. So the chance of anyone interacting with any other is the same. It's just the amounts what matter. But that, of course, does not include space, because in space you have diffusion. And then not every molecule has the same chance to interact with each other. So those that are close have higher chance to interact. So that's when you start incorporating more kind of, as you said, as you suggested, topology. And this has not been done so much. And we are going to do it in the near future in our Templeton project. So that's another big motivation.
I think what's interesting, what's most interesting, if you would say the ear is a good way of trying to understand those dynamics, is just trying to work on that duality itself. So you are talking about this all the time. I mean, you have the level of dynamics and the other level where you try to lay out the network in a more finite way, as a set of, and I think it's exactly on that duality that the ear can make a difference. That's the difference with, for example, vision, where you would, we simply don't have the tools to be as accurate with vision. We don't have the same timing sensitive apparatus. So in vision, you will try to put one object next to the other and maybe try to see, like if you see like a line, if you want to understand the line in its infinity, in vision that's impossible. You have to extend on this mentally. But if you listen to those kind of infinities, it's straightforward because of that apparatus we have, which is really accurate. I think I thought part of the reason to use music or sound as a way to understand dynamics was exactly this.
Yeah, that's really, it's really interesting, this idea. Yeah,
it's interesting from a quantum mechanical point of view also as well, but that's another
that's another lecture.
Yeah. But,
yeah, then anybody has questions?
Well, first of all, I want to say to Stan that it's very interesting and intriguing. Yeah, the idea that he expresses is also interesting, I think. Let's say that the connection with linear spaces, Hilbert spaces, and so on. Of course, one should try to make it more concrete. How can you implement something like that?
It should be done on real Hilbert spaces, not the complex ones. It's not.
Yeah.
And I think there's some examples of this already because they use this in signal processing. There's the article of Dennis Gabor. It's quite a good way of getting into this, which I mentioned here.
I have a question, which is perhaps not related on the subject of how to relate that to COT, because there is a lot of reflection to be done, I think. But if you think of the singing Neanderthaler there, could that be an explanation that music creates so much emotions in people? Let's say that, as if indeed music, there are not many things that can gather so many people, like a music festival. You cannot do that with a theater play, for example, even not with movies.
I think, yeah. So
that would kind of mean perhaps that the music touches, or the harmony of the music touches another level in our brain, in our emotional system, than the meaning content of language.
Yeah.
Well, even meaning could be there, of course. You can imagine that the first steps of meaning were just expressing sadness, expressing joy.
Yeah.
And this we can recognize in uptime music or ballad music. Yeah.
I think because I didn't mention it in live version, but I see it's in the text. There's an, at the time I was thinking a lot about rituals, musical rituals. There's really an enormous amount musical ritual. And the point that was interesting to make there is that, in fact, there is something in that music language level, so that more emotional and singing kind of language. There is an honest way or an iconic way, I would say, a direct way of relating to a kind of emotional arousal provided by the music radio, by the fact that our ears are just our radar, so something to track possible danger, for example. And when you make that straight mapping, which is at that moment not certainly not kind of a conscious way, but a kind of state of arousal, that if you would have a language to create arousal, or I mean a music language to create arousal state in people, and people can't close their ears, so they are forced to listen to this. This provides quite straightforward functionality to in groups for ritual use. I mean, you can, by singing to a group of people, you can be sure that they all will have or reach a certain arousal response that is kind of similar around the people, and that's unique. That's something which I mean, language, symbolic language as we know it, is not able to do. There is a kind of possibility of deceit, and there's also an arbitrary relation that is absent in that music language. So I think it's a really interesting aspect of this as well. And music still taps on that aspect of human communication, which is more manipulating kind of communication, if I would say so. That has a negative connotation, but I mean this in a less negative way. Yeah, I think, but of course there has, since we had music language and people are communicating with each other, there is all kind of feedback mechanisms taking place and evolving, and so there's a lot more that can be said emotionally, and that can even be balanced emotionally when people are talking to each other, or even singing or making music with each other. But that's a really small part of the evolutionary picture. I think the biggest part is to be understood from that music radar perspective, and a smaller part from the music language perspective. And the smallest part is I think is the part we all know as music as a kind of more cultural phenomenon, which we should see as a yeah, like just an art form, and somehow to be appreciated or not. I think there's a deeper aspect to it.
And would that go? You said that they have done experiments on that. What you said now, for example, that it's more easy by music to create a same emotion in groups of people than by language.
For example, I know Marc Leman at IPEM in Ghent. They do these group measurements of physiological, just a few physiological measurements. They measure blood flow, the skin conductivity to measure your sweat or transpiration, and then they measure temperature, heartbeat, and there's even a few more of those measurement apparatuses, and they measure this in groups, and they see, not always, but they see certain kind of consistent reactions between people. So they have they are affected in similar way. This is all. This is just part of the picture. I must repeat this. That of course there's a large, different part to it. To this, I mean, the part of balancing and to seeing an emotion as negative or positive in music is already really tricky and really arbitrary. That's something that's not. This is more on the level of arousal, like I would place the somatic marker theory of Damasio, and that's that kind of arousal, just a kind of tension building here induced by sound, but quite consistent among people.
Yeah, I think we can all personally relate to that. If you are in a group of people and somebody's playing the guitar or you listen to music, that there is more easy to create a kind of unity. Quantum mechanically, one can talk about entanglement then in some way.
Yeah, that's a whole new subject.
Would it go so far as a question now again that in Western style music, Pythagorean music, you can even you have the minor and the major, which is the sad and the joy, the joy combination of notes.
I think it's important there to see that the minor chord, which is typically seen then as the sad one, it can sometimes some people will just identify this as just the happy one, the soothing one, the one that makes you. It's a kind of consonance that somehow creates a tension. But I think the point to balance this as or to interpret this as a positive or negative emotion is already something which is hard to prove.
Yeah, but I don't say negative or positive, but let's say sadness is not negative.
Okay, no, but that they would say this as a negatively balanced arousal state, so something like that in emotion theory. I was referring to the theoretical part of that, but
you call soothing, soothing sadness. This the feeling you have. Everybody knows it. This is not negative, I think.
No.
Most ballads are in minor chords.
Yeah.
While army music is usually major chords. So yeah, you have both negative and positive on both sides, I think. But that's fascinating.
Yeah. I think it somehow gives you a bit like that somatic marker theory, is that if you have a possibility of a kind of communication that induces arousal, you can somehow traumatize people with this. And I mean traumatize in a soft version, like that somatic marker. You can mark people in a somatic way so that their memory of a certain situation is infected with that arousal. That's simple Skinner theory, psychological experiments in that sense. But so it's a really powerful tool which you would have in that music language, or maybe that music, some kinds of music that we have now, is that you can in fact create a kind of memories in people's minds, or underpin memories with a certain kind of arousal or somatic marking, and so create, I would say, create really powerful stories.
And what, of course, is very fascinating is that what you just explained in great detail, that we cope with frequency and with volume at the same time, with location and frequency at the same time, energy and frequency, time and energy, let's say, at the same time. Trying to attack the Heisenberg uncertainty relation.
Yeah. There's an article which states that but that's not possible in principle. But it states that if we just need like a small window in a waveform, just to have an immediate grasping of frequency. So it's too small for the quantum uncertainty. No, for the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. It's smaller than it allows for. That's what they say. But it could be related to the parallel processing. I mean, it's rather astonishing that we are not only doing Fourier transforms in the basilar membrane, but in different organs as well, at the same time, and through different materials. I mean, we're doing this through the liquid in the basilar, next to the basilar membrane, and we're doing this as well on different points, and as well our ears itself are an antenna for timing, which give accurate information on timing differences, they are all brought together, of course, in the way that only the body can bring things together in a continuous way, in a direct way. So this brings us to kind of paradoxes in science and philosophy, but somehow I think we are feeling that duality in reality by listening.
Yeah, that's intriguing to think that there might be some very primitive.
If we understand tonal relationships as quite evident harmonical consonants, but if you study the mathematics of this is quite a difficult picture, and it's straightforward for people. I mean, I think that's what Pythagoras was saying. I'm taking these measurements of strings, but I feel right away how things are, which waves are superposed, how the overtones of certain sounds match certain harmonics, which would already be difficult to compute nowadays, but we feel this instantly as, yes, this is consonant. Of course, there's a lot of noise also in the measurements. I won't say that we are perfect mathematical apparatuses, but there's something special going on.
Yeah, I'm also really interested in this duality between time and space, or velocity, position, or momentum, position, or period and frequency, kind of the relation between, or the wave direction. These two things that define the wave. But maybe there is some other topic to discuss. I think Christian Jendreiko was about to start talking as well, or someone else have a question to just to ask if there is any other, like.
Yes, I would have
Okay.
a question. Thank you, Thomas. Stan, first of all, thank you very much for your lecture. It's really great. I have two things. First of all, I want to say that your description of the ear as an antenna or as a radar system for motion tracking, and that the motion tracking is based on sound emission of objects or processes. This is really great, because this or to me especially, because this is the fundament idea of my work, so that I don't I just want to let you know this. So this was really great that it was really great for me to read this and to hear this from you.
Okay. Yeah.
So this is really great. And my question is, and so of course this has, if you, or the way I look at music or at sound, this of course has also then implications on how to look at COT, because if you and so also your approach, your cybernetic game idea is so, to me, also very intriguing in the way that you can look at COT, or this is the approach we have started to do in Düsseldorf, that we look at a reaction network just as a score, and then score in the sense of really what processes can we do, and the sound is more or less the emission of the processes that we are doing. You know, for example, like, but I haven't discussed it yet with Thomas, but the group of students in the seminar, I think they have some nice little concepts, and we want to, if it is possible, we want to share them with you here, and we would like to present it here, so that you get an idea of
Yes,
our
certainly. Yeah.
of our approach. And yes, and so for example, that we look at the at the reaction network that Thomas and Vincenzo took for their presentation and for their approach. And for example, then just look at it and use it as a score how you can work with a synthesizer, for example, you know. So this is the kind of approach, and this is one aspect which is very intriguing, that you presented this idea. And I have two questions. One question is, and then you said that music as the art of exploring motion dynamics in auditory perception. And so there would be my question. I guess it is both for you, but just to make it clear, when you say motion dynamics, do you think then in bodily processes, in body actions, which produce sound emission? Or do you mean also, when you talk about motion dynamics, that the sound waves themselves are the motions, and that this is also kind of object to the music as the art? Just as a question.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I can answer this. It's quite. I think quite easy to state that the sound waves themselves are, of course, also motion. But to me, it's mostly it's the emission of sound. I think you get this right. The emission of sound by objects, but it's the complete auditory picture we make of this, because I mean, there can be emission of sound by objects, but there can be reflection of sound by other objects on other objects, and there's also the motion of objects through space, giving rise to air resistance, and also giving a sense of displacement of sound. So I think that motion, that picture we make of the environment with our ears, is rather complex. It's not only objects displaced, but it is certainly the most important part of this, the emission of sounding and objects that are moving or that are just present in space around us. I think it comes together with the sound waves themselves, in the sense, if you have interfering sound waves, it's quite obvious. I mean, if you study acoustics and how this interferes, it's quite obvious that to make sense of this is already something really special for the ear to do. And it does so in an extremely accurate manner. So it comes. I think my answer is it's about objects moving in space and emitting sound, but it is, of course, getting mixed up with the sounds themselves, the way the sound waves are constructed, but also the overtone structures, and even boundaries, reflection, also the material boundaries are made of. It will provide damping factors. I mean, the picture we make is complex.
Yes.
I hope that's somehow an answer. But to me, the most important aspect, in fact, is objects moving through space. I think a lot of emotion comes into play because of that tracking of possible maybe danger or possible of approaching of things. I mean, if a sound swells in volume, or if you would feel the Doppler effect, or even a damping effect, or the way pitch can make you feel that something is taking, I mean, it's retracting from you. All those aspects are more related to the sense of arousal. I mean, because we are protecting ourselves with our ears from the radar system. So I think the place of objects in space would be the most important aspect.
Okay.
The way they are moving, in certain which
so your actions